If you think dreamy photos are all about editing, think again, because I've been using some crazy compositional hacks to get dreamy photos all the time. And I'm not going to tell you to put your granny's tights around your lens or put Vaseline on it or whatever the f***. Nah, these are some real creative compositional ways of getting dreamy photos on the regular. And I'm not here to play around, so let's get right into it. And I know the title says it's going to be 3 tips, but I might just add a 4th just because, you know, I'm a good guy. And I'm going to start off by talking about one of my favorite techniques that I use all the time. When I first got into photography, one of the first things I learned about was focus. Get your subject in focus and everything's going to be fine. And that's not something I ever really questioned, to be honest. Until one day, I started to play around a bit and try some things out. And I figured out that having your subject out of focus in the foreground can completely change the way your photos look. It's a really powerful compositional tool that can add a real dreamy element to the whole feel. I think why this is so impactful is how much the texture adds to this image. The out of focus part is super textured, and it also adds this sort of feeling of disreality. If you want to use this technique, then you really want to play around with your aperture, because if you go too wide open, you know, shooting at like f1.8, then your subject could be too out of focus to the point that it looks like it's just super blurry. It kind of depends on how close your subject is, but I would say between sort of f3.5 and f5.6 is a pretty good zone. The subject is in focus enough so that it doesn't just look like nothing, but they're out of focus enough that you still get that impact. And while we're on the subject, this next part is along the same lines, but it adds a whole other dimension to your compositions. I'm talking about framing. And really, framing can mean so many different things. I think traditionally people think that framing means what's going on totally in the outer edges of the frame. And it can mean that. It can be something that is completely framing your image. But it could also be in the way that people like Saul Leiter used to shoot, which is super impactful and has a very dreamy quality to it. One of the things that really adds to that is that most of Saul Leiter's work was shot with quite a long lens, like 150mm or so. And this long lens gives you compression, and that compression brings the subject closer to the foreground, and it makes it feel kind of confusing for the viewer. This kind of compression can make it easier to frame subjects in this manner, but you could still do it with like a 50mm or a 35mm lens. You would just be doing it in a different way in your own style maybe. There's so many things that you could frame your subject with. A broken window, a fence that's got holes in it, whatever really. You can be super inventive. It could be the way a tree, you know, the leaves in a tree are, and you're shooting from within the tree and there's a hole in the leaves. So many different things. There's so many ways to frame a subject, and it looks amazing whether it's dreamy or not. It looks brilliant. And next up, I've got something that can totally change the way your photography looks and feels. But first, if you're new to the world of film photography and you're trying to figure out your way through this crazy world, then I've got the perfect thing for you. A few months ago, I basically put together the course that I wish I had when I first started shooting film photography. This should take you from a complete beginner to taking bangers on the regular. And the best thing is, if you don't think it's for you, then you've got 14 days and you can get a free refund. It's absolutely fine. So if you want to give it a go, then you can get 50% off at checkout with the code FILMY50, because you guys have been really cool, supporting me, helping my channel grow. I just want to give it back. Anyway, let's get on to one of my favorite compositional tools. And to be honest, I think this is just a great compositional tool in all of photography. And it just happens to make things look dreamy. Most of the time when you look at people's photographs, you can tell what's going on. You can understand what's happening in the image. And maybe that makes sense as something that might be a way of taking good pictures, but personally, I think we should lean into the complete opposite. Making compositions that don't make sense or leave the viewer asking questions is a brilliant thing to do in photography in general. But it's also a really cool way of getting that dreamy feel. With this way of shooting, it's usually more important to think about what you're leaving out of the frame rather than what you're keeping in it. Perhaps there's a hand that's in the corner of the frame that completely changes the narrative behind the image, or a person's shadow without the person in the frame. It makes the viewer ask questions, but again, it also adds to the whole dreamy feel of the frame. This can be a much more elusive way of shooting. It's kind of a hard thing to understand, but if you think of it as leaving more to the imagination, leaving more to curiosity, asking more questions, you'll start to see how you can take those kinds of pictures. So those are 3 tips, but you've got another one last little cheeky little tip. And this is going to be a real quick thing to talk about, but it's so effective. I talk about it all the time, and it is because it's super important and super valuable, and it's totally free to do. You've got to try shooting in different kinds of light. And generally, what that means is shooting in blue hour and golden hour. I know everyone talks about it all the time, but the vibe and the feel that you can get from blue hour and golden hour is something that just can't really easily be replicated. The soft light, the perfect tones, the ever-changing color, the potential for mist that you might get or fog, it's all ideal for this kind of photography. Shooting at that time of the day is perfect, and it will add that dreamy feel. It will make your pictures more beautiful, and it's just pretty exciting because it's changing so quickly. So yeah, I hope you found this video really valuable. I hope you've got some more dreamy compositional techniques. But while I've got you, you really should go and check this video out that I made about taking more cinematic photos without editing, just purely through understanding the way that cinematography works. So go on, take a look.